President.
Nancy Steele.
Mike Yakawich.
Michael Marino.
Teresa Larson.
Doug Carey. Tom Kilmer.
Jennifer Owen.
Phil Cole.
All righty. And then we will do the police report so we can get Kodi on the street where he's needed.
All right. So this month's report is a little different from previous. We actually have a number of calls for service from years past, going back to 2020 through 2022. I don't know what's in the middle for the packet you folks have, but in 2020 in the Heights we had 14,319 calls for service. In 21 there was 13,314, and in 22 there was 13,801. And those aren't broken down into category, it's just total call. Calls for service in July. In the Heights, we had 225 police reports with a total of 1,267 calls for service. Those calls broke down into category. We had 47 area checks, 112 disturbances, 6 noise complaints, 5 sick or injured persons, 21 suicide attempts or threats, 174 suspicious activities, 18 threats or harassment, 24 vandalisms, and 79 welfare checks. Calls for service in the traffic category, 21 abandoned vehicles, 17 hit-and-run accidents, 22 property damage accidents, 4 accidents with injuries, 1 non-investigated accident, 8 parking complaints, 42 traffic complaints, and 127 traffic stops. The arrests for the Heights, we had a total of 81 adult arrests with 11 juvenile arrests. Of those new charges were 47 for adults and 5 for juveniles. Offenses in the various categories. We had 5 assaults, no burglaries of residents, 1 drug call, 1 DUI, 4 motor vehicle thefts, and 0 robberies. And then looking at the rolling numbers, previous year, last 6 months, numbers have gone down from March through May and are pretty consistent with June's numbers. A few categories have gone down, like the drug calls, drug arrests, and DUIs. But that is the month's report. Is there any questions on anything?
What do we do? I have a commercial building on 315 Main Street, and it had some transient kind of camp there, and they vandalized one of the shops Sunday. What do I do about that? When they show up, can we call the police?
Absolutely.
Just as soon as they're on the property, we can call.
You can.
The non-emergency one.
Yep, non-emergency, you can call. Another thing you can do, the police department has like a trespass warning, so that you can just fill it out. It goes to our police secretaries, and that property gets flagged. So if someone calls in, not say the property owner, but just someone sees something,
Sure.
we can go out. We have your permission now to trespass whoever comes on the property, so you don't necessarily have to call.
Okay.
If that's something that you would like to do. Otherwise,
Sure.
just call and we can respond out there.
Okay. We'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have another question. Nobody else has.
Yeah.
Can you give us any update on the school situation with Broadwater Elementary?
So we have officers working on that. There's actually some people out there today just trying to resolve that. The person is not committing a crime. It is not against the law to be on your property with a gun. And it's not against the law to open carry a gun either. It is just alarming because he is in the proximity of the school. From the interactions that we've had with him, his intent isn't directed towards anyone specifically. person has some mental illness, but that is being addressed as we speak. So just trying to get ahead of that before school starts tomorrow.
And the FBI has been involved as well.
The ATF.
Oh, the ATF.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, we have a task force officer assigned to the ATF who's heading that. So they're trying to work any angle they can just to make people feel more comfortable.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If you don't ask questions, he's got to go to work.
Yeah, so
You can
ask
swing
away.
by 315 Main Street then.
Okay,
Your
sure.
address is 315 Main Street
Yeah.
business. Okay, I'll have my guys check it tonight.
Thank you.
I have a question. So
Sure.
on the police reports versus calls for service, is that kind of the difference between one that there was a legitimate concern going on versus where you guys went out and nothing was actually happening or had already happened?
Right, so a call can be handled two different ways. It can be handled with just a narrative, so that call doesn't generate an actual police report, a written report. There is a record of that, and it is documented in that incident, but it doesn't reach the level of an actual report.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of that stuff, like a trespassing call, say we get a call on that, there's people on property that shouldn't be there. We go out to the property and we don't locate them, they've left before we arrived. So that call is documented, but it doesn't get documented with a written report.
I see.
So
Thank you.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes, that's it.
All right,
You gotta go to
I guess
work.
I gotta go to work.
Yeah. Thanks, Kodi.
You're
We'll
welcome.
see you
See you
next
next
month.
month. Folks, have a nice night.
Okay, now we'll cover minutes from the last meeting. Any corrections or additions? Any motion to accept the minutes? Ed so moves. Second. Doug carries seconds. All those in favor, say aye.
I
Opposed? All right, minutes are done. So, we got a guest tonight, Engels with Public Works. He's the drinking water person, not the sewer water person. So he's going to give us a good rundown on what the West End Reservoir and water plant is going to look like. So I'm going to give you the floor, Louis.
Thanks a lot, Frank. Put this around here so I don't trip on any cords. No, ruined it, I think. Just don't breathe on it, that's the key. Quite nice. Now, there we go. Good evening, I'm Louis Engels. I recognize some faces in the crowd. Thanks for being here tonight. I'm the water quality superintendent for the city of Billings. I do actually get to treat the sewer water. Actually, I get to do both ends. So basically my job at the city of Billings is to keep the water clean, both going to the citizens, their homes, businesses, but also the wastewater returning to the water reclamation facility. We're responsible to treat it to a very high standard and then release it to the Yellowstone River. It's kind of fun because we're at Oasis, and what good father wouldn't brag about his family? I am a family man. Talked about school starting. Those are my oldest and middle child, Rosalie and Leo, starting this morning. And then I have a third child, Dominic, who is on the left there. Oasis actually holds a special point in my heart because this is actually where my wife and I were baptized. And my daughter is actually being baptized here on Thursday. So this is an important spot for me. Enough about that. So we're here to talk about the West End water system. In some ways, I guess I should say, I've informally been calling it the upstream water system because I think there's kind of a misconception that it only serves that area. And the reality is that it serves the entire city, and I'll talk about why that is in a bit here, but it's probably best to talk about the why of the plant first. And I always talk about it to a layperson, and it's an analogy I use, is how much water we treat on a daily basis over the top of a football field. Our plant is rated at 60 million gallons a day. That sounds like a lot of water. What does that actually mean? So this kind of helps visualize it. So in the wintertime, if you took all the water that Billings uses and you put it over the top of that plain surface of the football field, you'd have about a 35-foot deep pool of water that is day in, day out produced at our drinking water facility. So in the summertime, you might imagine that increases quite significantly due to irrigation. So 120-foot wall of water that we produce in the summer, on peak days in the summer, we'll see that much water demand. So that's day in and day out during the hot summer. So where do we stand on capacity? So in this analogy, our plant is capable of producing about a 140-foot pool of water over the plain surface of that football field. So we're nearing that capacity. And some people say, well, we're not over that capacity. Well, if you don't have any downtime or any flexibility in that, it's really hard to catch up. We saw that in the summer of 2021 when we asked for water restrictions, which were very successful actually, that we don't want to get in that zone where we don't have any bandwidth left. So one of the big reasons for an additional water treatment plant is capacity. So some of the other reasons, we only have one water treatment plant. If you've been across the 27th Street exit over to Belknap Avenue is where our water treatment plant is located. We love to host tours, so if anybody would like to come visit and see the facility, you're more than welcome to do that. There's some great things about the Yellowstone River, and there's some challenges about the Yellowstone River. So most cities our size are on a dammed or controlled river. The Yellowstone River is not a dammed river, which is something to be very proud of in our city, but the Yellowstone is the longest undammed river in the lower 48 states. So that means is we get some incredible amounts of water coming down in the spring, and then towards the end of the summer we see some lower flows. Just like in 2022, flood was a big deal. We are actually in the FEMA floodplain. We have some burns that aren't recognized by FEMA, so we're not as vulnerable as maybe that seems, but nonetheless, it was close. We saw a 500-year flood last year, and without some great measures by our staff, it could have been a lot worse. So that's a big risk. Second risk here is transmission. So it's not just the treatment plant, but it's the pipes that lead the treatment plant that are important. There's a couple of very big pipes. The biggest pipes in our system actually come straight from our plant. Actually, the Walter Pump Station, which is almost to this location. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then there's another pipe that goes to the west end of Billings. Basically, it ends at roughly Monad and 29th Street. But those big lines are nearing capacity in the summer. So it's not just the heart that we need. The major arteries of the system are nearing capacity as well. I didn't touch on these other items. Energy efficiency, this is the biggest energy hog in the entire city. To move water is very energy intensive. By moving upstream and moving where the water is being used, we can save $200,000 to $300,000 a year is the projection by just having the treatment plant upstream. And then finally, water right utilization. One thing that a lot of people don't know is that Billings has done a great job setting themselves up for the future for water rights. However, we do have what's called a water reservation. And that is basically a system that was set up in the 70s that cities were able to reserve rights in the future at a particular priority date. So ours is 1974. So when we start using this West End system, we will actually actualize that water right, which is capable of serving an additional 100,000 people. So our water rights roughly can serve about 350 to 400,000 people if you include that reservation. Take that reservation away, you can probably serve about 300. So at some point, I mean, in the West, that's pretty rare, honestly. You you look at a lot of cities, look at Bozeman, Boise, many cities around the area are struggling with water rights, and Billings is set up very well as long as we utilize those water rights. So we don't have long. So what happens if the treatment plant goes down? So we divide the system up into what we call pressure zones. Pressure zone 1 is downtown. The pressure zone that we're currently on here is called 3 East. And so I ran some numbers just to see if that treatment plant is down during the summertime. So if it went down right now, in about 5 hours downtown they would have pressure complaints, and then in about 8 hours they would be empty. So we cannot be offline for long. Similarly, up here we have a little better storage with those 2 tanks over there by Harvest Church. Those give us about 11 hours till pressure complaints, and then 21 hours to water being shut off. So what do we do about this? This has been looked at for a while. So one of the ways that we've tried to mitigate these risks is look at storing water when there's excess water in the Yellowstone. And so this actually was an idea back in the 60s. You may have heard of it, where they were going to dam the South Fork of Canyon Creek and dam an area there and pump water from a pump station outside of Laurel and move water up there and store water so that if we had these impacts like we're talking about, that you have a treatment plant and a reservoir there. So that was originally an idea back in the 60s. We actually ran the numbers on that back in a 2014 study. At the time, that was $300 to $400 million to do, which kind of immediately took it off the table. That's probably double that now, if I had to guess. So it's an idea that's been considered before. So I'm going to go back to our transmission system. So they have, hopefully I don't get in trouble for copyright infringement, but it's the whole Oasis logo there. That's us there. Our treatment plant is located here. I'll just talk a little bit about our existing system. So these are those 2 transmission lines that are really key to our system. And I refer to these as the backbone of our system. So and this is why I say it can be kind of a misnomer to say, oh, this is the West End water treatment plant. Well, if you connect to anywhere on this backbone, you can serve the entire city. So it just so happens that the most upstream point, which would be the most energy efficient point, is on the west end of Billings. So both of those pipes are critical to the Heights Water District. They're critical to serving up here through Walter Pump Station, and they're critical, obviously, to the west end. So when we bring in this new treatment plant and reservoirs that's roughly located at Shiloh and Hesper, we will actually finish this connection here. We will connect to that backbone. That backbone allows us to serve all the way up here, and that gives us the choice to either use either treatment plant to serve the entire city. So here's a rendering of the 2 reservoirs and treatment plants. Things are just slightly different now. Actually, the treatment plant is located here now. But generally, this is the concept and location of what we're trying to build. 48th Street West and Shiloh, and then we have Hesper bisecting the area. This reservoir is about 100 acres. This one right now is about 40 to 50 acres. So those 2 reservoirs are capable of meeting the needs of the entire city on normal winter water demands for 40 days. So that gives us that storage volume to ride through an oil spill, ride through the other plant being washed away by a flood, by who knows what natural disasters. That just kind of takes us out of the floodplain and puts us in a much more resilient position. So let's talk about the system and kind of where we're at today. So originally our plan was to take water from the Yellowstone River. We actually purchased land at Duck Creek Bridge. Then we were going to build a well water pump station, pump water 4 miles through a pipeline to these reservoirs so that we had complete control over the entirety of our water system. So So this has been, inflation hasn't been kind to, well, hasn't been kind to anybody, but it hasn't been kind to this project either. So in order to save money, and doesn't mean that won't ever build a raw water pump station and a pipeline, but at least initially we're going to use the Billings Bench Water Association canal. It actually runs right on the southwest part of the site. So the energy conservationist in me is very much likes that because it's right there. We don't have to, pay an additional $100,000 a year to pump the water to these lakes. So there are some advantages with going with the canal. Obviously, there's disadvantages in the fact that it's seasonal. In our discussions, we have an agreement with the BDWA, but we also have had discussions about running it an extended period of time. Right now, they run from April to October. We've talked about adding an additional month on each side. We've also talked about periods in the winter, if we get a warm spell, that we might run it for a week, fill up the reservoirs, and then turn the ditch off. So that's the current plan. Then obviously the other parts of this are the reservoirs themselves and land use, as well as the water treatment plant. We'll pause now for any questions on what I've covered thus far.
Louis, on what you just said, if we're using the ditch and we draw down the reservoirs, that is going to expose all that bank, and then it'll come back, and then you expose the bank. What is that going to do to the options for recreational use? Because at that point, as it goes down, it's getting away from any docks, it's getting away from any beaches, it's getting away from any wildlife, wetlands, that sort of thing, that up and down process. Any comment on that?
Yeah, I would say you can kind of envision it like a bathtub. This has not quite, but near vertical walls. So it's going to take a long time for each foot of that to drop. So some reservoirs are built where, you think about Yellowtail, or Bighorn Lake, that it's kind of this sloping effect into it. We'll have a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 slope that basically goes down to the bottom of our bathtub. So yes, you will expose more of the bank, but it's not at like such a huge gradient that you might see in another reservoir where the reservoir's down and all of a sudden you got 100 yards until you can even get to the water. That won't be like that. Obviously the intent will be to not draw it down because it's there for the resiliency, and we're going to try and balance inflow and outflow. The other thing I would say is that this would only be during the winter time. And so we will also be running the new plant at a very low flow rate during the winter time. As I showed at the start, the demands are real low. So we're going to do as much as we can not to draw that in.
Okay, makes sense.
So the reservoir is lined?
So how this works is what's called a cutoff wall. So we'll have, right now, my image is we have the bottom of a bathtub. We have the shale layer that basically goes throughout buildings. So what you do is you build an embankment, earthen embankment around that are your walls. But inside that embankment is a cement wall that is keyed down into the shale that precludes the water from passing either way. So when this has been done in the Denver area, we've talked to a bunch of them when they've done this in the Denver area, and they said the best thing you want to do is make sure that there's no movement of water either way. So that's the plan to keep it sealed. Go ahead.
On the water right, you have a certain amount of time to use those rights, or else lose them, or are they indefinitely out there?
So it's gray right now. There was been, I believe in 2015, there were some talks about re-looking at all the water reservations and seeing if the water right was utilized. As long as there's plans, I mean, if DNRC came to me today and said, no, your water right's going away, I can show them and say, no, we have plans for this, which would be a step in the right direction. So it'd be harder for them to dispute that, but using them is really what actualizes them. If they give them a hard date to win, hey, if you don't use them by 2024, you're done, they're not getting that.
Are those water rights on the Yellowstone River or are they somewhere else?
Yep.
How close were you to operational on this thing? Like how many years?
Sorry?
How many years before you're operational?
So early 2026 is when we would currently project it to have plants online. That's the hope is to move that into 2025. We should have the reservoirs on, at least one reservoir in late 2025. But coming online is early 2026 is the current plan. All right, we'll keep going. Just talking a little bit about the amenities. First off, none of the, I shouldn't say none, we can have a path that goes around the reservoirs. We can have some sampling access piers, but these end land use amenities won't be funded through water funds. Can't do that. I guess I'll let Jennifer talk about that in a little bit, or if you want to jump in now, I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, we actually don't have the funding for those amenities right now. It's in the bond that the city's going out for about $7 million, but we will not be funding any of it through water funds, so you will not be paying for this in your water bill.
So this is some of the initial inland use design, but again, that's not currently funded. And I talked a little about construction and when we intend to complete construction, and that's currently our schedule. We actually, I got the question from Frank whether or not when we were starting. I officially said that we have started because we're dropping the water level right now, but I don't think that's really counts until we actually are removing dirt and moving dirt around, which I anticipate this winter for that to begin. That's all I have. So, more that you want to say on funding?
I don't, unless anybody has questions.
Has anybody done a study of the economic impact of funding those amenities and what that would bring to Billings in terms of tourism, regional traction?
Let me take that one.
So we haven't done a formal economic analysis, but we have done more of an informal one that we submitted with our grants for this. So we are continuing to drive that path of getting more funding through the grant process. We haven't had much luck so far. Really, there's not a lot available in big dollars for parks grants. You know, they're more in the $200,000 range, which is just a drop in the bucket for us. And then we're really competing with the Parks Department for parks. So we try not to do that. But not a formal analysis yet.
So the Parks Department will install and run the amenities, the land use amenities, or no?
So all the construction will be done by Public Works, but Parks will manage the
They'll manage.
park.
So Public Works will need to have the money, or the money comes from?
It will become
Parks
a
and Rec?
park, and so any kind of maintenance of the ongoing operations will be out of Parks, rather than Public Works.
Right, is there a possibility for it to be a state park? Like how old would be?
We have looked into that, and we'll continue to look into that. Obviously, we give up some control if that happens, but we looked into that. We looked into being managed by, what is it, the conservation, Yellowstone Conservation. We were going down that path for a while, trying to get some legislative money that didn't work out. But it's not anything firm yet as far as who's going
Is there a fisheries plan in this whole master plan?
So we've talked with, and we'll continue to work with, as the design goes on, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. Mike Rose is over there. I'm actually meeting next month with Walleyes Unlimited. They're very interested in the area. So yes, we intend to, the way I view it is, I want to be able to give a blank canvas to however these land use amenities work out. I don't want to preclude us from doing anything like, for example, a beach. We were already talking about that with Mike Teddy, the Parks Director, last week to get his input on it, as to how do we make sure that we don't build it so you can't do that later. So we'll make sure that we set it up so that those options are all on the table, and the funding comes around, we can do that.
Liz, can you comment on the quality of the water in comparison to like Owen? My understanding is it's a world better,
So,
and hence more amenable for fishing.
yep, so Lake Elmo, it used to be an irrigation regulating reservoir, right? So it hasn't really been managed with the intent of trying to, at least not until it was given to parks, with a lot of fisheries in mind. So from a quality standpoint, both for our own safety and drinking water and for aquatic life, those are going to be very paramount to us. Testing and making sure that if we don't have to fill when the river is very dirty, I mean, at times you see the ditch roll through the city and it looks like chocolate milk, right? That's part of the benefit of having two plants, is where you tend to manage it where the least amount of sediment, the least amount of contaminants possible are going through the reservoir. So all those will be managed with those end goals in mind. The other thing I would say is that from a drinking water standpoint, we're going to even have a better process than what we currently run. We'll use a membrane treatment process in the new treatment facility, so the drinking water will be exceptional quality when it's hitting our system.
Where the water comes in from the ditch, are you gonna have like a settling pond that can be dredged out periodically so that when it spills over to cleaner water into the reservoir?
Yes, we call it pre-set basin, so that's currently in the plan. It depends on the time of year, so there's times where the Yellowstone will readily settle that sediment, but there's also times where there's a lot of bentonite in the water, and that doesn't settle no matter how long you let it sit. So we'll have to think through the best way to manage that going into the reservoirs. We talked about adding actually a tiny bit of our coagulant chemical to clarify the water. So that detail hasn't been totally fleshed out, but those are considerations to make sure that it's aesthetically pleasing.
Because over the years in Lake Elmo, there was a big, huge material went out there that settled right out of the ditch immediately.
Yeah, you can see it. I've looked at it on the aerials and talked about it with Mike Ruggles, and one of the things he's like, man, I wish we had a pre-sedimentation pond to do exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, then another question is there an outlet on this?
Yeah, so you have to have spillways from a dam safety, even though it's in a hole. DNRC will require us to have spillways, emergency spillways. We will also have the ability with our raw water pump station to move water, wastewater if we wanted to waste it back to the ditch. Normal operation though, we will try not to waste it. We'll want to, what we're bringing in goes out to the treatment plant.
So is one of the outlets going to go into the conservation area you got right next to it?
That's one of the areas being considered, is to, if you spill off the North Reservoir there, does that potentially help with water quality and mixing? That's one of the things that will come in detailed design.
Can you explain how, with the design of this, it actually affects a ditch as it goes through the city for safety's sake of the city?
So, you're saying if there was a breach and we were able to shut it off. Originally, we were trying to plan it so that we could gravity flow from the ditch into the reservoirs, but due to groundwater, we can't go that low. So basically, we would be able to pull the capacity of our raw water pump station, which is 48 million gallons per day, and that's like 75 CFS if you're familiar with more irrigation speak, would be able to be put into these reservoirs as much as we could. So it would help, but it wouldn't necessarily be able to mitigate the whole thing.
But it would allow for where the ditch can open to relieve down the streets and stuff, it would allow for less flow there.
Yes.
So there'd be less damage.
The other thing I should say is part of the improvements is, if you're familiar with that ditch where it crosses Canyon Creek, we're improving their wasteway there, or some people call it an offloader. So that's part of the agreement to help with some improvements. So they would be able to offload a lot easier, not necessarily all of it to go to the reservoirs, but to offload it to Canyon Creek will be helping with that.
Thank you.
Going back to one of your earlier slides with the two blue pipes, is there any redundancy in them?
Yeah. Back there. So this is a simplified version. Obviously, there's an entire grid up and down every street. Pipes are just smaller. So there's actually a second way to serve the heights through here that runs through our pressure zone 1. I just don't have it shown on here. Similarly to downtown, there's a couple big pipes that I just didn't show for clarity that both for the west end and up here, as well as downtown, there's multiple ways to get to a certain point.
Well, why two reservoirs instead of one? Is it just because Hesper bisects that piece of property, or is there some engineering reason for the two?
A little of both. So I would say we didn't want to disturb Hesper Road because it's an important artery for people going west. It's becoming more and more used. Maybe I don't know what we'll do with speed limits in that area. It's something still to be figured out to potentially slow down in that area. But the engineering purposes are, if you have two, you're able to, for instance, if there was something went wrong in one reservoir, or you had a reason to take one down and not the other, it's similar to like what we do with water tanks. Having two from an operational perspective makes things a lot easier for maintenance.
Is it set up to flow both directions, or do you have to pump?
So we have to pump it initially from the ditch. Current flow path is from the ditch to a pump station to the North Reservoir. North Reservoir is, I can't remember, it's 5 or 10 feet higher than the South Reservoir, so it flows south to or north to south. We have the option, one of the things we're still trying to figure out is, do we raise the South Reservoir so that they're even, so that you could do the reverse if you wanted to. My understanding is from the engineers, we currently have the flexibility to from that pump station to pump it anywhere and to pull water from anywhere. So that should be good.
What's the maximum depth?
Maximum depth will be about 30 feet. Shallowest, I believe, is 20, 23. So like I said, it's going to be a pretty even bottom. It won't vary a whole lot. Although I will say we want to take the input of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, where they have stated that any sort of shelter, any sort of outcropping or hole in the reservoir is good habitat. So what that means may be that we take an excavator before we fill this thing and really dig in an area that's a hole for that, or some, and that's not going to be terribly expensive, but create some structure to it for fisheries.
So you're gonna know where all the good holes are.
I'm going to know where all the best holes are. I won't tell anybody. Oh, maybe I'll probably tell the mayor, I suppose.
Any other questions for Louis? Thank you, Louis.
All right,
Good job.
thank you.
Want me to go?
Now Jennifer wants to talk about garbage.
Talking trash tonight. When I called Frank to ask to get on the agenda, he said, "You mean to tell us how stupid this is?" So the bar is low for that. But just take one and pass it down. I have a few handouts, no presentation. First back.
Oh, really? Wonder why.
Sure. We do try to print a lot less paper than that's normal. So we are rolling out a number of solid waste changes. September 11th is when they start. So I think what we need to start with first is what problem are we really trying to solve? Because most people are realizing that there's no problem. We sell as much trash as we want, we pick it up, and we just pay the same price no matter what we put out. What's the problem? But imagine if we did that with water, where you were paying for somebody to fill their pool across town. You wouldn't want to do that. You pay for what you use. So right now, we have an extras program that has grown out of control. Only about a third of the people in Billings use it, so the other 2/3 are paying for that 1/3 to set it out. And I'll tell you, I'm in that 1/3. We use a lot of cardboard. So right now, we have people who literally, it looks like they just open their bags and dump it on the street and expect us to pick it up. There's astounding pictures that we are expected to deal with. Our drivers are, so we're losing drivers, there's safety issues, worker comp issues. You never know what you're going to find in those piles of trash anymore with different needles and things that they might have to deal with. So we have to do something different. The other thing that we have is we have a very inefficient route system. So I don't have a picture of this in your packets, but this is the current where the different colors represent the different days. And so we are all over town every day, which means that if there's a problem with the truck and we have to send somebody out, I mean, it's really inefficient, costs a lot more in fuel. Supervisors have to cover the entire city every day instead of just one area. So we're changing everybody's, well, it's about 85% of people will change their day of garbage. And so this is how it will look afterwards, where you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Makes a lot more sense for us and is a lot more efficient, keeps rates lower for everyone. Then the other thing that we're trying to do is really extend the life of the landfill and just defer when we have to build the new landfill cells, because each cell costs in excess of $10 million just to build. So right now, one thing to keep in mind is cardboard makes up 12% of what goes into our landfill. And then we have been getting lots of requests for just straight out recycling. Why don't you just do either separated recycling or single stream recycling? And the reason is we're not set up for it right now. So for about $3 million in upfront costs, plus about $2 million a year to operate, we could do that. But right now, we are set up because the city chose to go the extras system. We have these rear load trucks that can't pick up cans. They don't do that. So we're not set up for that. We have to buy all the new cans and pay for all the new containers to do that. It is a long-term goal, but it's not something that we could do today. The extras program, just so you know, we're a little bit different in Billings. The average trash that people put out is 4.9 pounds per person per day, which is a lot. But in Billings, we're exceeding that. We're at 6.32 pounds. Because we have a system where there's no incentive to use less trash here, none at all. We've also had a lot of requests for smaller bins, usually from senior citizens, like I only have one bag a week, can I just have something smaller, it'd be easier for me to manage. And then the last thing that we're trying to solve is blowing trash. We can't control the wind in Billings, we've been asked by city council many times. But we really do have problems with that trash that people throw out on the ground blowing around. We have problems with it blowing out of the trucks or out of the landfill. So we are going to a system where in our new city code, it does require your trash to be bagged, which will be a big change for people and something to get used to. We're going to have kind of this period for the next couple of months where we're not citing people, but we're just trying to deal with them and work with them to educate them on all these new changes. But that's a key thing for us is bagging that trash. But yard waste, we don't want that bagged because we're going to compost that. So I'll start with this one right here. So the services starting September 11th, you'll still have your regular black barrel. You can have up to 2 of those. So the first one is for 96-gallon containers, $13.90. You can get a second one for only $4.50 a month. So if you do have a lot of trash, it's the way to go is to get that second barrel. And then we're offering the 64-gallon barrel for $9.90 a month. If you have a 64-gallon barrel, you can't have a second one because it really is supposed to be for those users that just have very little trash. And then, like I said, we are asking all household waste to be bagged. And then yard waste, still going to provide that service just like we do now. Some areas of town do not have yard waste on the same day as their regular trash. We are going to have all yard waste on the same day now. So that will be an improvement for a lot of people. And there is a maximum of 2 green barrels with your service. But there's no extra charge for the extra barrel. There's no extra charge for any of the green barrel. It's just included in that $13.90 per month. And then we are changing the extras program to cardboard only. So remember, 12% of everything that people put out and take to the landfill is cardboard right now. And roughly 50% of the extras that we put out right now are cardboard only anyways. So we believe that most people can get by with either getting an extra container or redoing how you do your trash to make sure that you're putting your cardboard separate. And that cardboard collection, again, will just be once a month like your extras is now. But instead of always on Monday, it's whatever your day of service is. So for Heights, everybody in the Heights is Wednesday collection now. So I've had some people say, I can't do that. I have Tuesday collection for 50 years, but you can do it. Get used to it. So starting September 11th, all Heights will be on Wednesday. So since Wednesday is the 3rd day of the week, your cardboard collection will be the 3rd Wednesday of the month. And then we do still have, if you have extras that you just can't fit in your garbage, we will have an on-call 4A service where you can call us up and it's $5 per item. And we're talking, an item is basically a 32-gallon equivalent. A lot of people have those little 32-gallon garbage bins. So something like that, or a 2x2 type square foot area, or the tall kitchen bag is 13 gallons. So we're saying basically 3 of those will collect as one item, or you can bundle your branches still and we can collect those. The other thing that we do have planned still is we still will do the fall pickup. so that we have that leaf collection for everybody. Some people end up with 50 bags of leaves. We know that. We're not expecting everybody to do that as extras. We'll still have those bins placed strategically throughout the city for people to bring those to. We're thinking about doing some kind of spring cleanup to help people out. And then, of course, if there's a storm and we just have a lot of branches and other cleanup, we have another collection event for that. For cardboard, that is a green sheet. So there's some specific rules. We're not taking paper. Another reason that we're not recycling right now is there's just not a market for a lot of things, but there is a market for the cardboard. We have to pay for it though. We're collecting it, and we have partnered with Earth First. They got the bid. Hasn't been awarded yet, but they were the only bidder. But the estimate was that we went into this with was $100 per ton for cardboard that we're paying them. They bid $75, so we're really happy about that. But we're taking cardboard and what we call box cardboard, so any of your soda boxes, your cereal boxes, that kind of thing is great. Egg cartons, and what we're asking, because we're not having them in containers, we're asking you to either tear them down and put them inside another box, or just tear them down and lay them flat beside your bin. A lot of people are like, well, what if it blows away? Well, remember 50% of our cardboard right now or extras right now is cardboard, and it's not blowing away. But if you have a stack and you're worried about it on a windy day, just have a rock and set that there. We'll make sure that we leave you your rock when we collect that cardboard. But we're not allowing anything with liquid in it because it has that wax inner, and we can't recycle that. You don't have to take stickers and anything off your cardboard, but you can't leave the packing peanuts and all that kind of stuff in it. We're asking for that to all go into your regular trash. Greasy pizza boxes won't work. Anything with that kind of oil on it contaminates it, and we don't want an entire truck of cardboard to get contaminated. So we're hoping people really comply with this so that we can do that. Besides recycling it, we are also going to compost some of it. So some of it will go just to the landfill, and then we don't have to pay that third party to deal with it. And we will compost what we can, and then the rest will go to Earth First for them to take care of. So this red one here that you got, we are going to be out in the next couple of weeks. Every single person in the city who has a trash can out will get a sticker on their trash can telling you what day your day of service is and having this information out there for you and when it starts. So we'll be looking for that. You'll also be getting a postcard probably Monday in the mail with some of these things on it. Emails, probably do a phone call also, just trying to get the word out to everybody. If you don't follow us on Facebook, please do. We have a lot of information out there, and we'll keep posting that. Have some good videos that we've made for this, so we'll be posting those on Facebook too. And then we do have a frequently asked questions on our website, and the website is listed on the bottom of each of these pages, but it gives you more details of what we're doing and why we're doing it. Any questions? Miracle.
Day of pickup on the cardboard, no longer Monday,
Right.
but your normal garbage day, and the day of the month is determined how? Is it always going to be this third for everybody in the whole city?
So if your day of pickup is Monday, your cardboard collection is the first Monday of the month. If your day of pickup is Tuesday, it's the second Tuesday of the month. So that way we have one day each week, and doesn't overwhelm our staff, but people really want it on their day of pickup, and it makes it a lot easier for people to remember that.
Jennifer, you may have said this, but I didn't hear it. When we're talking about extras, these 3 bags are one extra?
It is.
So $5?
Yes.
And then same for the bundles of sticks?
Correct.
Okay.
Is there any incineration done at the city dump there?
We do not incinerate, well, we have fires. But not on purpose. So we do not incinerate now. No.
Has that ever been explored?
We've explored that. It was actually an option proposed as a project a few years back. It's unbelievable what goes into that. It was somewhere upwards of $300 million to install everything. I know you have questions. Comments?
Like, Jennifer, this is something we talked about a lot at council, so maybe you could just talk about it a little now. How do we know the recycling will actually happen, rather than just having cardboard shipped off to another community?
So we can definitely put that in the contract with Earth First to ensure that that's what they're doing. But if you talk to Earth First, they are very committed to recycling. That is what they do. So I do believe that we have a good vendor, but we can certainly put it in the contract to ensure that's happening. One concern that we do have is you can't really recycle wet cardboard. So there may be times where if it's already raining, we ask people, don't put it out, but we'll collect it a different day.
But you can compost that.
But we can compost that. So it's not the end of the world if it does get wet.
Is there a separate truck that comes around and picks up the cardboard?
There is a
Besides-
separate truck, yes.
So it doesn't get hit.
Right. Yep.
I feel like I should know this, but there will be no, this is residential only, right? There is no cardboard commercial recycling.
Correct.
So how do you keep track of your extras of what you're charging a homeowner for their service? Whatever service you provide them, how do you keep track of that?
So right now, because of the way our billing system works, that's why we have this set $13.90 fee for all services, or $9.90. If you get an extra barrel delivered, that goes into the system, right? Extras is call-in only now, so when they call in, that's when it goes into their bill and it'll be billed that way. Obviously, it's a little bit of a trust factor right now. They're going to call in and say, I have 5 items. If the driver gets there and, it's all over the place, you give us a call and talk about what we should do there. The other thing I didn't mention is if you have larger items, we do pick those up now. And we will continue doing that. It's called our bulky program, and it's a whole separate truck that comes around. So that's your mattresses or your sofas. We have a lot of that kind of thing that if people just don't have a truck to haul it to the landfill, they can always use that service. And for regular household trash for residential customers, you can still go out to the landfill at no cost. So there's that option too.
Jennifer, I think I know the answer to this question, but maybe you can comment for others. How do our costs for solid waste processing compare to other large cities in Montana and the region?
So the 1390 is...
That's called a softball.
Yeah, that was, thank you, that was helpful. So the 1390 is the lowest of anyone in the region. And that's what we're trying to do, is keep our costs low. So we have to control some of our programs a little bit and control some of the trash that we're picking up. The next closest, I think, is 14, almost $1 higher. And then you go up to $30, $40 per month for garbage service.
Will the city be taxing the out of county haulers to the same extent as the city? In other words, you want separation of cardboard and that type of thing?
So we don't have a program right now to separate cardboard for like the haulers and that kind of thing. City Council has made efforts through the years to It's basically subsidize the residential service in Billings by charging those outside of the city limits and outside. We do take some waste from Wyoming, so we charge that at a much higher rate. I think the county right now is 150% more than Billings, and out of state is double what Billings is. All right, thank you.
Any more questions? All righty, so let's,
Thank you, Jim.
Teresa, you got something on school district?
Extras?
You want me to skip it? I have the sheets here. Dr. Garcia is setting up the community meeting. Well, he's already set them up. To go through December. And the agenda is here. It will be the same at every location, just at different schools. And I will pass everyone can take one of those around if you'd like to see that. We heard, I guess, the police report about the groundwater situation. Are there any other questions about that? As a school district, we did.
How long has that been going on? You said the news account service suggested that they tried to summarize.
That's what I've understood as well.
Sorry?
I think that it was something that somebody noticed specifically when the open house happened at Broadwater. Supposedly it was quite an issue then, so that's when we had kind of decided to step up a little bit, the district of it. Dr. Garcia actually has 4 SROs at that school for the next week. He was there this morning and in the afternoon there just to talk to the parents and teachers and answer questions. They have moved the children to the backside of the school where cameras can help keep an eye on them, and it allows the school to kind of be a buffer between this man and the students. So
Where's this guy's house relative to the school? Which side of the school?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Directly south.
I'm sorry?
Directly south.
Directly south. Thank you very much. So, yeah, any other questions about that? So, I know what I know. Dr. Garcia has come on, obviously, new superintendent. His 4 areas of concern, which he gathered from the community survey that he had sent out in the spring. I believe there are about 2,000 respondents to that survey, and from that survey, he gathered the information that we needed more teacher support, we needed to focus on school safety, on college and career readiness, and diverse learners. And so those 4 items are his and the board were working together to kind of use those items to come up with a 5-year strategic plan. And we have to also, with the community, develop a profile of a graduate, which means basically what the community wants a graduate of Billings Public Schools to be. And so we're going to, obviously, with these meetings, gather information about that. There is a parent advisory board that is being set up to be able to help work through some issues as well as the profile of graduate. So, what else is happening? School started today. That's a good thing. We made it through one day. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
They decided to leave the career center where it is, right?
It is now. There's a steering committee that's been developed, and they are looking at the options of doing some remote locations, using like the Lincoln Center to house some computer science classes, technology classes, things that don't need big space or heavy equipment. So we're kind of looking at that option, as well as MSUB, using some of the space there to kind of create more room, I guess.
So what kind of program do they have for strategy students? Because it takes them so long to get over there.
Right.
So they're actually not a good setup for them, so
No,
Is
it is
anybody
not.
working towards all this?
I
kind of,
think that is the idea behind moving kind of a satellite location to SUV
But that's not for any
But
hands-on, that's for medical and things like that, not automotive, any,
if you want to take
Welding.
it automotive or welding with other big equipment, construction, yes, at this point it has to be. Unfortunately.
so does Lockwood send students to the career
We do
center
not at
too?
this time. We don't have the space for that. But,
It'd be good if they did something for Skyview, because that's a long ways over there.
yes, I do agree.
There's probably a lot of students that could use it.
I do agree, and the board voted on that back in May, and I voted to have a central location, but I was in the minority, unfortunately. We're looking at other options right now. So,
Any other questions for Teresa?
thank you.
Alrighty, city. I guess that's you, Jennifer.
Well, I defer to the mayor if there's anything he wants to share.
And I'll defer back.
Nice. So let's see, a lot going on council as usual. We've just finalized the budget over the summer. Did, I think, some important things on public safety that I'm really excited about. Dedicated $500,000 to start conversations with the sheriff about a pre-arraignment misdemeanor holding facility. So looking forward to those conversations. We've commissioned an evaluation of our municipal justice system. So looking at everything from evidence collection through prosecution, the courts, and then trying to understand our impact on the jail. And then also beginning some work on a family justice center to address domestic violence, child abuse, sexual trafficking, and sexual assault and human trafficking in the community. Domestic violence and family violence represented half of the assaults in the community last year. So we think this is an area where we can really make some important gains in public safety. So a reasonably good budget cycle. We did, I think, have to put our mills at higher than I would have hoped because we have an obligation to fund the franchise fee settlement within 90 days of the judge approving the settlement. So we have to do that this year. There'll be a rebate coming out this year as well, but our hands are sort of tied by the terms of the settlement in terms of those mills. Heading into the fall, we will be continuing to focus on public safety. Obviously, there's a conversation about the parks levy. Next Monday night will be a conversation and potentially a vote on a resolution to put some parameters around that $143 million bond. Just as a reminder, that $143 million is the amount of capital raised, not the cost of the taxpayers. The cost of the taxpayers with interest over 20 years is well north of $200 million. So important debate heading into the fall. What else have I missed?
Two height-specific items. The Parks Department had their Rec to You program, and one of those was at Hawthorne. And
Hugely successful.
yeah, big success. So that's trying to take small-scale recreation programs into the smaller parks, so the kids don't have to go so far, and that's been very well received. So the hope and expectation is that we'll be able to find dollars to expand that to a lot more parks. This was just kind of a pilot program this year. So a win there. The other thing that's not really directly city related, but involves city property and the heights, or the edge of the heights, is Boot Hill Cemetery. Just sort of FYI, Dave Watson-Reed, former state senator who moved to Billings about 8-9 years ago, has been sort of taking that on to work to clean up and mow Boot Hill, and work to try to get the sign moved down to the parking area so you actually can see it, know what it is that you're driving by. And since that's kind of the gateway to the heights, just something to keep your eye on. And we appreciate his volunteer efforts. I've been trying to help him with connecting them and raise money for that project. So, FYI.
The slide at Castle Rock Park is the last missing piece of that playground. It should be in before the end of September, and then next summer we should see those parking lots paved and the bathrooms renovated. Those are all of the things that are budgeted for Castle Rock Park right now. The Interbelt Loop appears to continue on pace, and then we were able to, I think through a number of successful efforts on the part of the planning department, there will be a West End development plan and a heights development plan. Our development plan is very old, and so that will get redone. The West End plan is out for bid now, and the heights plan will go out for bid probably December, January. So you should see next year, the task force is really central to the development of those neighborhood plans, so you should see that kind of early next year, begin that conversation and kind of what we hope to see in the heights. There are still a lot of things that are undone from the 2006 plan, so I expect many of those will come up. And then you may see an additional plan on top of that to do more economic development, specific thinking around the Inner-Belt Loop and the Billings bypass. The Billings bypass is not on schedule, it's quite a bit behind at this point actually, so that I think is at least a year delayed at this point.
All right, thank you. Mark?
So the thing that
When are you
probably,
gonna build a jail.
let's talk about the bridge, the new bridge connecting to the heights. That's not usable until they finish the railroad overpass. They did get the final piece of right-of-way, which would be on the east side of Colson Road, that little farm there. There was, it was a family deal. There was 3 or 4 parties in it. The one party who was out of state, my understanding, they were the holdup, and they did finally get that piece put together, but it's pushed construction back on that until next year. So next year, as soon as they finish that, they will open the new bridge to the heights. It will not be hooked up to the double diamond, converging, whatever, because that's not going to start until 2 years from now, but hopefully by next fall, we'll be driving on that new bridge. The other piece, the city-county has a criminal justice coordinating committee. I guess it's actually the county. It's done through the county attorney's office. They are convening a subcommittee of 10 members, which is supposed to look at the jail, the courts, and to find out how prisoner movement, prisoner flow, they're trying to look for efficiencies. I think what they want to do is they want to put all the pieces together of how, when a prisoner is arrested, their movement through the system, and they want to find out if there's some issue getting them from Mark's facility to Jennifer's facility. If there's some muck-up that there's somebody at one of those facilities that isn't doing their job or isn't returning emails or whatever the case might be, it's going to be a non-public meeting so people can speak freely and actually have an honest discussion about where the problems might be. So hopefully we're going to get some kind of diagram that actually shows prisoner movement, and then we can figure out what's bogging the system down. Is that a fair?
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Yep. I think you got it.
So I think that's the biggest thing. Build a bigger jail. We can build you as big a jail as you want, Frank. You just tell me how much you want to pay in your taxes, and that's what we'll build you. And I say that a little tongue-in-cheek, but in reality, that's what it's going to take. If people want a bigger jail, we're happy to do that, but I think we need this piece done so we can actually figure out how big a jail do we need. I mean, right now it's 435. The capacity running this week, we were at 595. But that's because we can't get people out to DOC, so that's a component of this. What's the holdup getting prisoners to DOC? And I think that the answer to that is the state doesn't have the capacity to take prisoners. Deer Lodge is full. So at some point, I'm sure we are moving in that direction to talk about a jail expansion, but I think before we approach the public, we want to have our ducks in a row. We want to actually have the facts to present to you and say, here's what we know. If you build a bigger jail, these are the figures or what we project the price per cell is going to be, so people can do the math themselves and understand how we get to whatever the figure is.
So what's your cost to Yellowstone County right now per day per prisoner?
Right now, I think we're right at 103, and we're getting reimbursed 81 or 83, Tom? 81 or 83.
That's my question. Why did they get it for that, when it costs us in Yellowstone County $100.
Because they're the state.
So
they
we're
tell you that's-
subsidizing them
Frank,
$20.
Frank, I don't disagree with you. I'm not,
Why was Lucan, and when he was imposing, he just refused to
That's
take
right.
the state prison?
well, you have 8 people that wear black robes in the courthouse that I think if they dragged you into the courtroom and said you're going to do this, I don't think you can tell them no. You can, but it's called contempt of court.
Sure was the law of the land.
I think that's the issue, Tom. I think if you tried to do that, the district court judges would have something to say about it. And, that's the sheriff's call. I mean, the sheriff is independently elected. The county owns the jail. The sheriff runs the jail. So that's the sheriff's call. I can't make him do anything.
Mark, do you know what the numbers were for the state most recently? During COVID, it was terrible because they didn't want anybody going to Deer Lodge, right? And it got close to 100, but then Goodwin was good and brought those numbers back down to a more traditional, 40 or 50. So if that's the number that we're looking at, that's about 10%. That's not insignificant. But if you're high 500s, that only brings down to mid 500s. That's built for 435.
You haven't moved the needle very much.
Yeah,
I mean, it
yeah.
doesn't.
But at 50, that means Yellowstone County and Billings city residents are subsidizing the state $1,000 a day.
That's correct.
And that's not right. So, thanks, Mark. Unless you got something else.
I have a question for you. I would like to know what goes on the Heights Water Board. I know what I read in the newspaper, but maybe you can give us, in the Yellowstone County News specifically is what I read, but maybe you can give us
We don't know yet. We're meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30.
There you go.
It's a rate study that is just something else, and so we're taking it one piece at a time. But tomorrow morning, 8:30, second meeting this month. It was 2 meetings last month. We're trying to wade through and get stuff on the.
Okay, so no pressure, but I expect great things if you and Doug carry.
We'll look for Doug. I don't know about me. All righty. Tom or Mike, who wants the floor?
I'll go first with Mike and clean up my messes.
You won't have any time left then, Mike. Okay, Tom.
I just want to say that I did reach out to Brian Drukin, who's the director of corrections, Department of Corrections, on your question on those D blocks. So the F blocks units are going to be replaced, and I think that's 700 beds. They originally were going to tear down the D block, which is about 90-some beds. And when they brought that idea to the legislative committee that I'm on, we said, why would you do that? Those D blocks were built in the 90s. And I did confirm with Brian Dukin this week, they're not tearing down those D blocks. So I have a follow-up email. This is my understanding. Once they've got the D block remodeled and the F units replaced, that should put 130 more beds at the prison.
I checked with my source, and that's what I got too. It'd be approximately 130 more new beds.
Okay,
We
that's
must
my
have the same
understanding.
source.
So that helps. Now, Mike and I, Mike knows more about this than I do, worked on alternatives across the state. I think with a few programs we did, appropriated a little more money. There's, 100-some new alternative beds across the state?
Right.
Which should help alleviate prison space, which should help county jail space, because all dominoes together.
So there was a bill up to the legislature, they were gonna ship a bunch to Arizona or someplace.
Yeah, there was, I think, I don't
That didn't
know,
pass.
200 or 300.
Did that pass? So
No.
they shipped.
It died.
It
They
died,
can soon leave them in Billings so we get to pay for them.
it died, if I'm not mistaken, due to an early signing motion in the Senate, which I did not vote for, FYI.
Okay, my source told me this is a 4-year project up there.
I'm not sure of the timeline.
That's what it is, because they're putting a camp up there on the state pen grounds, just so they got places for workers to stay.
We did appropriate money too for workforce housing in the Deer Lodge area. So that hopefully will help with recruitment. That's part of their problem, is they are not effectively recruiting correctional officers. And part of that's housing, part of it's morale. We will start meeting in September again on the interim budget committee, so I'll be able to follow up to find out more how that's all going.
All right, thank you. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, County Commissioner, excellent fare. Went to the Commissioner's Day with my wife, and he was so nice to me. Just well done. Brought my 4 or 5 grandkids to the fair. Just excellent. Mr. Senator McGilvery, you wanted me to statesman in Helena? That's a gentleman. He's a gentleman's gentleman. And I just say that sincerely. Great mentor, but also working in the midst of it is amazing how he kept his cool. Ed, you're awesome. He's removed a big truck in front of my house. Been there 6 months. I'm so proud of him. He's the hardest working guy in the whole city. But Ed is appreciate that. Jennifer, you guys did a great job. Mayor hosted USS Billings. And massive amount of work, but really an amazing work. Jennifer hosted the legislators, which you did mention, to Rock 31.
That was Roy, not me.
Well, you were there. So you all did a good job because you're welcoming and connecting to legislators. So just really, really grateful to be here. I've been a chair before and vice chair in Southside, so I know it's a lot of work. Thank you. Finally, one thing that I'd like to highlight, and I'd like to give this to you, is not money, but it's actually, I have a lot of hope on a big challenge we're facing is behavioral health, right? Related to drug addiction, and one could say one has behavioral health because of drugs, or one could say one has drugs because they're taking behavioral. Whatever the case, we're impacted by it. Our state, and this is pretty serious, is crumbling with addressing behavioral health. So to the credit of Department of Public Health and Human Services, and to the credit of Mr. Keenan, Representative Keenan, he put a $300 million bill working with the Department of Public Health and Human Services on revamping and revising the Department of Public Health and Human Services. Now, some of you, I'm not as sharp as knife in the drawer, Mayor, as you know, but we do know, you may know that DPHHS is huge. It's almost like $1 billion project, okay? It's from nursing homes to daycare and everything in between, Medicaid, Medicare, all of that. And so we are working, I'm on the commission, I'm honored to be on the commission, and we're really taking an intensive look at, we had 2 subcommittee meetings here in Billings already, but throughout the state, there's a genuine commitment to address this. And it could be revitalizing Warm Springs, or it could be creating a regional Warm Springs in this area. There's a lot of ideas, and a lot of good ideas, and we're asking a lot of people for their input. So this is a flow chart of the commission, and it's well done. They hired a group called the Guide House, and they're guiding this and having the conversation. And there's people from Dr. Arzubi, who is a leading psychiatrist in Billings, in Montana, to social workers and others. So it's very important. And so your input is welcomed. I'd like to just give this to you, Mr. Chair. You could at least look at it. And there are priorities that we have for the commission. I don't want to go into a lot of detail on it, but I have a lot of hope. I've seen them working on it. And I live I live on the south side. I encounter a lot of behavioral health issues, good and bad, and we need to address them. We're addressing them through this bill and through a lot in effort. So I just want to give you a message of hope, because all of us either have loved ones who are impacted by behavioral health or substance abuse, or we know a relative or someone like that. And so the state of Montana is really working hard to find solutions. And many of them are saying, we're not leaving the room until we find solutions. And I see that as a very genuine effort. So that's it in a nutshell, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I have one question. Sorry. So you were at the meeting that I was at last week,
Yes.
kind of a citizen in the shield meeting on crime. And the point came up, if you build it, they will come. How would you respond to that?
What came up?
The thought that if you build the services, they will come. So that Billings, because it has good services, attracts an element of a certain segment of the population that is part of the criminal element.
Are you giving me a softball
No, it's not.
or a hardball?
It's a hardball.
Yeah, hardball. Well,
Whatever it is.
well, I'm trying to wrap my mind around it all, but we have, this is what's mind-boggling to me. We're interviewing people from the county commissioners in northern Montana to eastern Montana, and we got fentanyl problem. But not only fentanyl, we got what they call those synthetics, like bath products. And what's really wild is now a lot of people aren't going to the pot shops because it costs more, so they're buying it off the street, and it's being laced with fentanyl. The deaths on the High Line are astronomical, and they're not reporting it. It's just so overwhelming. So we are in a crisis of that, because what's happening is that it filters down into Billings, and people, when they do synthetics and meth, it really messes them up even more. So then we become a point where we cannot really help them maybe get out of their behavioral health issues, but we need to figure out how to house them, or how to we do acute care, like go to the psychiatric unit here in Billings, but then they are released after 3 days max into the community. So to build a prison, you're asking, or to build a...
Tom's talking about the social services. Remember that day you and I walked downtown and there was 25 or 27? We went and visited.
Yes, okay.
That's why all these people are coming here, because they go to these other towns. Oh, go to Billings, they have all the help for you. That's what they talked about the other night at that meeting.
Oh, okay, so how I would want to say it is that we need to hold people accountable, right? We need to, and this is more of a concerted effort. I think Jennifer's worked on this too. It's like we need to work more together. I'm actually presenting to COC tomorrow. And so as leaders, and all of you are leaders, we have to initiate more of, we can't, not in a disrespectful way, but we can't just enable, but we have to really find ways of helping them be successful. And not just address numbers and fighting for grants and fighting for territory. So I do believe that Billings, or someone said to me today, Billings has the most resources in the state, but less managed, which is, okay, Jennifer, how would you like to answer that question?
What you just said or what he just said?
Both.
Well, so I agree. I think I've said in a couple different forums, we don't just have a quantity problem, we have a quality problem. We're just, the services we're providing aren't giving any results. So people are coming here and they're just being band-aids, which means they continue to be part of that criminal element. I think from my perspective, on the build it, they will come, I prefer that you don't build it here, right? Let's build up the resources so that people can be close to their natural supports while they're getting rehabilitation services or workforce services or whatever they need to make changes in their lives. At the same time, we're still the regional hub. And at some point, we have to act like a regional hub. So I think we have to balance between ensuring that those state dollars are invested statewide and not just dumped here, but also acknowledging that we're the biggest city, so we're going to have the most, and we need to do it at a very high level of quality so that we are seeing better outcomes. Because right now, the outcomes from services are just not good. It's not just that the waiting lists are long, it's that they're not working when you do get in the door.
That's part of your commission to look at that.
That's right.
Right.
So that's how I would answer it.
Thank you.
And what I'd say is you need to track the data.
Yep.
We don't have that now.
Well, there is a bill, and Usher's working on that issue. There's a bill to look at data and continue to develop better.
And we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, we want people, we have this huge healthcare community, right? So we attract people from all over the state, all over northern Wyoming, and when they come and they bring their money and they spend it here, that's a good thing. So it's not going to be a big surprise that we do attract people from outlying counties, maybe even outlying states. But we need to have the data to be able to measure what that is before we draw any conclusions, good or bad.
All righty. It's 8:30, and so it's time to call it the end to it, but I got a few announcements. 26th of September, Patty Webster will be here, and she's going to be talking about these concrete houses that they're going to 3D print. And she has to come and meet with the task force before they can get permission to move ahead on it. So she'll be the speaker next month. We have to think about the elections coming up in November. Are we gonna put on a program like we normally do? Somebody wants to head that up. Ed, you look like Mike just said you're awesome. Okay. Wow, we'll try and get it. We've been holding it down there at the Alliance because you can get more people in. So I'll work with you on it and we'll try and get something set up like a month or so ahead of time.
October?
Yeah.
That's the way, isn't it?
Well, first part of October probably wouldn't be bad.
Special meeting?
Yeah. Yeah, it'd just be a special meeting. It can't be a task force meeting, so it'd have to be a special meeting. Another thing coming up in October is new elections of task force officers. So you guys got to start looking for a president. I'm termed out. So, be thinking about that. I think October is when we do it. So, start working on that. Talk to your neighbors. See if somebody wants to get their feet wet. Anything else that's coming up that anybody knows of that's good for the order? If not, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Doug Gary, so moves. And second? Second. Ed seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
All righty. See you next month.